Beijing has lashed out again at Washington's draft defense budget for next year. It's urged the U.S. to go past its so-called political bias to create favorable conditions for Chinese companies. The $738 billion bill was signed last week by President Donald Trump. It includes measures to strengthen ties with Taiwan and slow the lifting of sanctions on Chinese tech giant Huawei. A Chinese Commerce Ministry spokesman says Beijing will closely monitor the situation and defend the interests of Chinese firms. It comes as China prepares to hold joint naval drills with Iran and Russia against a backdrop of heightened tension between Washington and Tehran. Now, our correspondent Lynette Lim joins us. Lynette, so China obviously displeased with the U.S. defense draft. Why are they keeping up the heat on Washington?
Well, we do know that the Foreign Ministry of China has already made comments regarding the draft, and this time is the turn of the Defense Ministry, essentially putting more heat because they see this as yet another step from the U.S. in terms of pushing out legislation with an overt anti-China bias. Recall that we first had the bill supporting human rights and democracy in Hong Kong. Then we had the Uyghur bills that seeks to punish officials in China deemed responsible for repression of Muslim minorities in China's Xinjiang province. And now we have this bill that not only threatens China's economic interests in the U.S., but also wants to shine a light on China's militarization in the South China Sea, wants regular reporting on the military build-up and the weapon systems in the South China Sea, and also is seeking to call out China for what the U.S. says are influence activities, campaigns targeted at influencing public discourse in overseas communities by way of language and cultural institutes such as the Confucius Institutes. And in response, China says that the negative provisions in the draft that affect China negatively have to be stopped from being enacted into law, and that these undermine mutual cooperation and trust between the two countries. China also said that the U.S., accounting for more than 40% of total world military expenditure, has no right or moral authority to call China out for being a military threat.
Okay, so with tensions between the two there, it appears that perhaps maybe Beijing is pivoting towards Russia and Iran. Tell us about this joint military drills tomorrow.
The Defense Ministry also said that these drills will last from the 27th to 30th of December in the Gulf of Oman. We understand it's the first such trilateral exercise. And while, Iran would be keen to position the drills as a message to the world, that they have friends, they have allies, China is a bit more cautious about doing that. And in fact, they're likely to limit their involvement to their non-combat anti-piracy, anti-terrorism naval forces. That's because China is unwilling to be drawn into the Iran-US conflict. And what essentially China wants is to be able to showcase their destroyer, the Xining, in these naval drills, and to also potentially sell weapons to Iran. So there's an economic aspect, there's a geopolitical power rebalancing aspect, and obviously China is the world's largest importer of crude oil. It wants to diversify this crude oil sources from Russia and Saudi Arabia to also Iran. And in participating in these drills, it's also signaling to the world that it wants to protect these waterways, which is essentially China's lifeline to the Middle Eastern oil.
All right, thanks for that. Lynette Lim speaking to us from Shanghai.